A woman is an oracle, but we've got to develop this skill because it's been forgotten. We have focused more on an external beauty in order to get resources than our inner value and wisdom. And of course, at some point, it wasn't safe to do that. Women have been shaped into believing that we are weak and that we need this physical masculine protection and resource, and there is truth to that, but along that path we forgot, and instead we're competing for the men, we're competing for resources, we're competing for who looks better, who's younger, all of these things, where when we return to our center, when we really reconnect to the bigger purpose of why we're here, and we source ourselves to that, like that's our true resource, because that's our intuition, that's our wisdom, that's our sense felt of reality. We're able to discern lies through our body. We're able to protect ourselves in a way that external protection you cannot do.
Anabel, thank you so much for joining me on the whole shebang.
Yes, I love it. And I love the title of your podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's kind of fun.
Yes.
Before we dive in, could I ask you to start us the way that you've been starting our classes, just to breathe us and ground us? And I know normally a host wouldn't ask a guest to do that, and you're so gifted, and I wanted to invite that opportunity if you're open to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I love it. Let's ground. Okay, beautiful. So if you're driving, please do not close your eyes. If you're sitting somewhere, let's just come into our body. So placing one hand over our belly, one hand over our heart. Just taking a deep breath into these spaces. Coming into our body, inviting the body to come along with us in this journey of exploration and conversation. Maybe taking one deep breath into the heart, expanding it, allowing it to soften the shoulders as we exhale. And one more breath into the belly, this beautiful cauldron of transformation, digesting life, emotions, food, and exhaling in gratitude. May today's conversation serve the highest self in you that is ready to receive, that is ready to be ignited, and bless this beautiful being, Jennifer, that she may take us on a beautiful journey and grant us access to her beautiful self and intuitive self. And I am here grateful in service to the highest self of us and our evolution. Blessed be. Let's take a deep breath in together and anchor that in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ooh, now it feels
Yeah, we're in a yummy space. I would like to start with, let me back up. I shared a little bit of this with you when we were first in communication on Instagram, and one of the things that I'm perceiving about you, or that I'm taking in your presence, in what you share on social media, in the class that we're in, which we can talk about that maybe a bit later here, is like how embodied you are. And what struck me, I don't even know if I have the words for this, and it's going to make me emotional. Oh my gosh, out of the gate. How many minutes? We're 2 minutes in. I'm going to cry. A couple of things, just your own relationship to your beingness, to your body is really, the way that you show up with that, to me, feels so beautiful. It feels so powerful. It feels so embodied. And it doesn't, to me, have a whiff of, look at me. It just is. And I imagine that that's taken you work to get to this place. And so what's just all week, as I've been contemplating this conversation, what's been surfacing for me is to ask you about your relationship to your body.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, so I don't know
Thank
if you
you.
want to start and like go back and talk about what the journey has been and where you are now, but take that where you feel like taking that.
Take it where it takes us, right?
Yeah.
That's such a wonderful doorway to enter this conversation because, I really feel that yes, it's been a lot of work, self-respect work, self-love work, and self-appreciation work, but mostly grounded in my source because I feel that when we lead with where we are created from, it's inevitable that we embrace our own beauty in a way like a flower embraces her beauty. She doesn't blossom in like, hey, look at me, look how amazing I am. But then when you look that way, you realize, wow, that is a beautiful creation. And I think that beauty also has less to do with our physicality in a way. Like that is beautiful, right? Like we get to dress up, we get to wear the nice textures, all of that. But ultimately, if the beauty isn't from an internal source, it's really just aesthetic, and I really see that as a woman when we are in our bodies and comfortable in our skin and really resourced from our creator, what we're exuding is just that beautiful invitation to the sacred. And I think that that's what makes us beautiful. When we give an invitation to something deeper, to something sacred, rather than just the superficial attention. And I say that because so many of us, and myself included, I've done so many things to in a way, like, I'll speak into this. Like when I was 21 years old, I got implants. And for me at the time, it was led by this kind of like, well, everybody's doing it. And of course, like this is kind of the thing, and I actually got them removed last year. And it had been like a 5-year journey to get to the surgery of explanting. But what I discovered the month before the actual surgery was the deeper reasoning why I made that decision at 21 years old. And for me now, it really gave me sort of this idea of like that was being feminine, that was being this powerful feminine. I had these, beautiful breasts, and by the way, I do miss them. I'm not gonna say I don't.
I was gonna ask.
Incredible. I enjoyed them very much. Like, I think that when we start going deeper into the deeper layers of what makes me beautiful, what makes me nourishing, what makes me fulfilled, you start to find that so many times we modify in the external. We modify in the external what needs to be reconnected in the internal. So it's almost like we try to feel this hunger for something deeper through the external. And we can say that, it's kind of like attention versus value. If we can have attention, we can, have all that, but it doesn't mean that people value you. It doesn't mean that you value yourself. And so I think that ultimately the journey into the body is a challenging one because we are going to face a lot of the reasons why we don't want to be there, why we judge ourselves, or who spoke words into us that, we made opinions or judgments on ourselves. And it's almost like peeling off those layers to really go into that place that honors the body as a vessel of what we are here to create, and I often say, like, I really love looking at my body. And when I work with women, this is the work that we do, is learning to see ourselves as a temple and caring for ourselves as a temple where God resides, or creator resides, or the goddess resides, because when we do that, I've gone to beautiful cathedrals and temples, and they have the most beautiful artwork there. They have gold. They're stunning. But it's not just that, it's their spirit there, right? There is this energy that you sense. And for me, that's our vessels. Like these are only external mirrors to our own sacredness and our own beauty. And then you also begin to appreciate others, so the whole comparison thing, the whole, like not wanting someone to look better than you, or the whole ageism thing that is a very real thing for us women, all that, it just lessens because you start to realize that those are all just ways in which we are distracted from our true inner beauty, our true capacity and capability. The woman's body is just incredible. It's miraculous. We weave babies, we weave humans into being. There is not one organic human in the world walking around that did not come through a woman's womb, through a woman's body. Like how sacred, how wow, and so when we start to really see that and value that over whatever culture says is hot right now, it's a whole different way of embracing life and embracing yourself.
There's so much there. I've taken a lot of notes. I imagine that there are some listeners listening, and there's a piece of me that probably still feels this, and for sure many of years ago felt this strongly. It's like, okay, that's great, Anabel. I hear that, but I'm single and men like this, but there's a lot of like, yeah, but that is what society says is hot. And so does this mean that I will be fill in the blank? Not accepted in my friend group, outcast, that I won't find anybody, that there's these fears, right, that are beneath going against what society is telling us is normal and acceptable. And so I guess I'm not sure quite what the question is, except that I'm observing that I think that that's really a real thing that people, right, we struggle with, like, okay, how do I just let go? Like, and you said, well, I like to get dressed up and I like to, but how do I let go of that being central, or the fear around letting go of that?
I get it. I get it. I've been there. I'm 44 years old and I am single currently. And so I feel like that's something that it's inevitable that we're going to come face to face with. And that's where I feel anytime that you go against the grain or against the norm in something, one of the things that's going to prepare you for what's on the other side is the ability to accept that. Ability to accept that, yes, you may not have the same environment on the other side or the same group of friends on the other side. But the question then becomes, what are you anchored in? Like, what are the values that are fulfilling to you? Because I can keep playing along in this game, chasing that forever youth serum, chasing that forever, trying to look 20 years old, when I'm 44, or it's an endless chase. And whenever we focus on the material aspect of it, that's the thing about material pursuits, is that they're always going to make us feel not good enough, because it's always a chase, right? So it's like, okay, you got the car now. Oh, what's next? You got the house now. What's next? You got that surgery. What's next? It's an ongoing thing. But when we bring it back to the inner cultivation of our energy, of our power, of our remembrance, of something ancient that lives within a woman, that is you build momentum, and it just grows on its own. It's kind of like you grow interest in it, without you having to feel like you're not good enough. And actually what happens is that the challenge is at the beginning always, because at the beginning it feels like that. You've got to, it's almost like a shedding of skins. You've got to dissolve these identifications that have kept us chained to systems that do not want us to thrive, that do not want us to be self-expressed. And so when we do that, yes, it feels it feels challenging and it hurts, and and all those things. But then that is the preparation itself to be able to hold power, to be able to exude trust, to be able to understand that what is meant for you can never be taken away. So I would rather, cultivate my energy and wait for, and I don't even believe in the word waiting, because I think that we're always in preparation. So whatever it is that I am quote unquote waiting for, I'm actually being prepared in this moment to receive it. Because if it's not here yet, there's a part of me that's still developing to receive it. And in that way, it's like I rather, wait and cultivate, work on myself, and show up and work on my ability to receive love, and my ability to be okay with being by myself for now, because this is where life wants me, than to be out with, 20 different dates and men, and who are only interested in my boobs or my butt or my, like that aspect of it. Like they just want to go have a good time. It's like, no, I think I rather, slow down and really cultivate my energy. And I will tell you this, even this year, it's been really fascinating, because ever since I had my explant, I really feel a different energy within myself. It's almost like I created a space in my being that is now being, I feel it, and it's emerging. And one of the things that I've gotten this year, it's almost a year now, but is this aspect of like wow, Anabel, you feel so feminine, you feel so gentle, but also fierce. It's not like a soft that is just kind of lost or in the ethers, and I also know that I have men around me that value that, that are saying, you know what, this is really rare. This is not, we don't really experience this. And some men will not be prepared for that. And that's also for me to know that it's not necessarily about me, but it's that someone else isn't prepared for the level of integrity, the level of soul-led life that I value. And so
it's so beautiful. I actually had written this down, and you basically used some of these words verbatim. I wanted to ask you about this in relationship or in dating, because this is how I'm experiencing you, is that you feel really, feminine, flower, like soft, but also fierce. And I'm going to use the word oracle. I don't know what word to use, but just the way that you channel, the way that you are source, and how that can show up in a relationship. And if we can speak to that romantically, because to me, it is this beautiful union of so many things, leading and being led, softening and being fierce. Like it's a lot of that. So if you can just expand a bit more on what you were just saying, when you said that there are men around you that say, I don't see this that often. What do you think they mean by that?
Yeah. I feel that there is and thank you for all those beautiful words. I think that I have experimented and experienced the full spectrum of being a woman, and now I'm in a place where I feel this inner power really grounded in and understanding that it's not mine per se. I am in service to something greater, so for me, getting on here and having a conversation, this is how I am receiving the moment, right? It's what is alive right now, rather than me memorizing, a book and just being so knowledgeable. There's a difference. There's a difference between wisdom and knowledge, right? And when wisdom is present, it is alive and it changes things in the moment. So when someone is in your presence and you are attuned to your wisdom, to your own source of wisdom, that field is informing the person that's around you as well. So when I have these conversations with these men, and granted, I have men that have that, like, they're willing to pay for my counsel, because it's like, I may not know anything about their business, but and to me, it's like, well, that's your partner's job in a way, like but because we're not developed as women, we are not sourced in that way. And I really feel that a woman is an oracle. You said that. But we've got to develop this skill because it's been forgotten. We have focused more on an external beauty in order to get resources than our inner value and wisdom. And of course, it wasn't safe at some time, at some point, it wasn't safe to do that. Women have been shaped into believing that we are weak and that we need this physical masculine protection and resource, and there is truth to that, but along that path we forgot, and instead we're competing for the men, we're competing for resources, we're competing for who looks better, who's younger, all of these things, where when we return to our center, and of course this is not popular, we're probably not going to see this on being valued on TikTok or
you don't think this is the one that's going to blow up?
Not yet. I will tell you this though, it is more of a conversation now than it was when I started my journey, right?
Oh, I bet.
So there is progress, but I also believe that as a woman, it's important to value generational wealth, generational inheritance. And when we're doing this work, like for myself, I'm not just thinking of my lifetime. I'm thinking of the generations that will come, because I have experienced the benefits of women who have done their work before me. I stand on their shoulders, and so for me, that's when we really reconnect to the bigger picture, the bigger purpose of why we're here, and we source ourselves to that. Like, that's our true resource, because that's our intuition, that's our wisdom, that's our sense felt of reality. We're able to discern lies through our body. We're able to protect ourselves in a way that external protection you cannot do. And in the world today, there's so much noise, it's confusing. There's information about everything everywhere all the time. Things sound the same. And so for me, it's so important that I cultivate my vessel as sort of that interpreting the vibration of things, the energetics of things. And when my body is not clear and I am reactive, I'm not emotionally developed, or I am too limited in my thinking, then I don't have access to that. And so this is why it's important, like even in that program that we're in together, right? To be able to dissolve those limitations, those stories that we believe, and to really get in touch with what's at the core of this, our innocence, our truth, our birthright, that we were created by something that it's almost like this just benevolence that moves through us, but that is distorted in the expression of the world. And it's the restoration of that, the remembrance. We have been here before. We have been in these vessels. We can look up times in history where oracles were valued. They were sought out. They were, the oracles of Delphi, right? Like, they were trained. Women were trained to become these priestesses and these oracles and these wise women, medicine women, all of those things that now we have come into this society. And, now it's about climbing corporate ladders, or different definitions of success. And I think that right now what's happening is all that's crumbling because our feminine bodies cannot function in that system. We have a unique blueprint that is very different. And so this is why we have adrenal fatigue. This is why we are, experiencing all these physical ailments, because the body's saying, like, hey, no, I don't want this. This is why right now that soft era girl is so popular, because it's like, wait a minute,
It's
I
a real
need to
thing. I
rest.
mean, people are literally, the bodies
It's a
are
real
actually shutting down. They're like, I just talked to two women in the last 2 weeks that they're not talking about this type of conversation, but they're experiencing that of just like, I had to quit my job because my body was shutting down. And I think what you just said is like it's crumbling because it's not working. And I just think it's inevitable. Whether we choose it or not, it's going to choose us because of what you just said about our bodies shutting down and not being functioning that way. And I wanted to come back. A few things that you just said are really sticking out to me. You using the words oracle and wise woman, and we're talking about ageism and beauty and all of that. And as you're saying that, I'm feeling the depth of what you've cultivated in your vessel, and the wise woman and the oracle. And if you can speak into that a little bit, what is an oracle? What did they function as historically, and how would we develop that now? And I know I'm giving you a lot, but this path sort of that I'm seeing in this conversation potentially is, what is the new vision that we're creating for the wise woman, for the woman that is entering a new phase, that's not constantly looking back going, I wish I could be that. What is the new vision?
Ooh, so and I'm going to speak about my own kind of vision for it, and
Yeah.
and hopefully that serves. But for me, I feel like, women remembering their true power is so important, because we are operating under false matrices of power. And this
Yeah.
can be the independent woman, that I don't need anybody. I could do it all myself. The super woman, that's like, I am a mom and I run a business and da da da. And there's like a pride in that.
Yeah.
And there's also this power of like, this is my truth, and and I'm gonna fight for it. And I feel that all those are stages in which we can remember our true source. However, I feel that as the maturation journey unfolds, what we realize is that actually the deepest, most powerful uh, sense of power is gentleness. It's grace. It's soft. And also it's fierce, but it's not fierce in the sense of fighting for it. It's fierce in its sense of knowing. Because for me, when I speak from that fierceness, I am not fighting for anything, because the moment that I try to defend something, it means that there's a part of me that doubts it, so I've got to prove a point. And now where that fierceness comes from is, I am standing here and I stand for this. So it's more like when we're talking about benevolent power, which is what I call it, is the ability to become a life giver, to be a walking blessing, to be a field of forgiveness, and not in the sense of you bypassed everything, but rather because you're doing the work, and you're exploring the polarities of things, that you're recognizing, this is what's true in my being. This doesn't work for me. And so you're able to give yourself permission to really get to know who you are, because most of us do not know who we are. We believe that we do, because they're programs that our parents or society or we think are cool, but really, most of us do not know who we are, because we don't give ourselves the permission to explore what that is. And for me, what that's looked, I'm a mom, I have an 18-year-old. And even that, I think there's so many projections that a woman receives in this society, and both good and bad. But I also feel that, for example, with my son, like, some people tell me, oh, your son must be so amazing, and a mom like you're so loving. And, my son is not the most amazing sometimes. I tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's an awesome human, but he's an 18-year-old, and I don't want to impose things on him that are that images. I want him to explore who he is, and so for me that's a challenge, because as a mom, I want my son to do well, be well, look well, and to be able to step back and say, hey, have your experience. I'm here as your mom, but go out there, have your experience, make the mistakes, find out who you are without your mom, find out who you
Yeah.
are, and I think that's I'm so willing to do that for him, even though it is challenging. But when it comes to me, I didn't want to do that. And I think that's where as a woman, when it comes to us, we put ourselves last. Even when you think that, you're really good with boundaries and all that, it's like you deplete yourself in order to fulfill images, in order to fulfill roles that have become an identity. And when those roles don't uphold the perfection that you wish, then we feel like a failure, or we feel like that, right? Because if, granted, my son will decide to do whatever with his life, but if it's not what I would idealize, I could easily say that I could have done a better job as a mom. It
Oh.
means something about me as a mom, and it doesn't. At this point, I'm like, you have your own life. I'm going to love you as your mother, but I'm your guardian. I'm not your keeper. And so
Yeah.
go, live your life, express your gifts. And so I turn around and I tell myself the same thing, and we're always evolving. Like, we go through our Saturn returns, we go through cycles. We are cyclical beings, pretending that we're not, pretending that we're always supposed to be in spring and summer, always kind of earthing and, and having fun in the sun. Well, there's also autumn and winter, and those are actually very necessary for a healthy and fruitful spring and summer. And
Right.
so I do think that, the body is so resilient, but eventually it will start to give you the signals that what you're missing out on, and it wants to return to harmony, because the body wants to harmonize. It's created for that, for health, for vitality. So whatever is moving us of that vitality is going to begin to express itself as ailments.
Yeah.
And most of us, I didn't grow up knowing about my cycle, about how
Yeah.
important it was, like the hormonal changes, that every week is a different hormonal shift for my body. And here I am pretending to be the same for the whole month. It's
Right.
and this is why we think we're crazy, or this is why we've allowed
Yeah.
we've allowed that those partners to kind of tell us, like, oh, are you on your period, or are you, like, you're exaggerating, you're dramatic, you're emotional. Absolutely I am. That's my nature.
You're
So I
welcome.
don't,
I
yeah, like, this is me. It's a full expression of woman. But when I'm unaware of that, it's in a destructive way. When I'm unaware of that, actually, if I see this as an ally, if I understand that every week I have different access to different wisdom, then I'm going to honor it in a different way. But most of us are not. And birth control is one of the ways that, we disconnect from the cycle, and or just, medicate it. But even cramping, cramping is contraction of the uterus, and these are like waves of pleasure that are contracted. Pleasure cannot move through our beings. And I'm just not talking sex, I'm talking about pleasure, the senses, being alive.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then it contracts. And this is why a lot of us experience those painful cramps. It's not meant to be painful. Yet, that's the same thing we do with life. Wherever we're experiencing those contractions, those painful contractions, there's life wanting to move through there,
Yeah.
flow through,
Oh,
right? And so you
oh,
start to
yeah.
see how everything in nature is such a wonderful teacher, and it's an extension of our bodies. And when we start to pay attention to what our body's saying in a greater context, we realize we do have a blueprint on how to live on this planet, even though the systems currently in place do not benefit because they're profit driven, not human driven, right? And so that's where we go against the grain. And I think that it's also really beautiful because we're in a time where we can get creative about how
Yeah.
to be in business. We don't need to be in a brick and mortar office now. It's like I'm sitting here in my living room having this
Right.
beautiful conversation with you. You're having this beautiful, awesome podcast where you reach so many people. And so it's more when we return to knowing ourselves and being in our bodies and residing in that, everything else begins to emerge. And our work is to be patient with it, which of course that's the challenge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And to reconnect to what is that mythology that is wanting to live out through our lives, through our experience. What is that you are here to gift the world? It isn't, it may not be what you think it is. But when we begin to unravel and return to ourselves, that's where we reconnect to that source of every woman can be an oracle. Every woman has that access, but we've got to learn to listen because it
Yeah.
doesn't come as a loud voice like, oh, hey, this is the wisdom. No, it comes as an cultivated inner silence, and then your body, because it's a different language. It's not like I hear a voice. It just comes, and it comes in like the way I feel it in my body. It comes like in these waves of this energy. I can feel it when it's present, and this is spirit. And when for some of us who have gone to church and have been in religion and things like that, if you've ever had a spiritual experience in one of those services, that's spirit. That is yours. That doesn't belong to the church. It doesn't belong to the religion. It doesn't belong to the institution. That's you tapping in to that source, you know? But of course, that's a whole other subject.
I know. I'm like, Annabelle, but I mean, I'll tell the listeners before we hit record, I was like, Annabelle, don't talk yet because I know you're going to flow and riff. You're going to like battle rap it out. It's going to be amazing. Thank you. Oh, this is so powerful. I had a question for you. So as we're learning how to tune in to our body, and we're waking up to this sense of intuition and call and mythology that wants to come through us. And I feel this at times too, those contractions. I mean, I reached out to you a week ago, like, help, I'm contracting. I have these moments of doubt, fear. Am I crazy? And, I think you had called it, I don't know if you called it the feminine wound but just that ancient wounding that is there around this, like being an intuitive wise woman oracle, and the fear of taking that quote unquote too far or being crazy in that. But then wrestling, or I'll just speak to my own experience, as the knowing is becoming, as I'm becoming more sensitive to my knowing, the fight becomes less because the knowing is so strong. It's just like, I can't not do these things, but it's working through those contraction points or sitting with them, right? To come through them. But, so I'm curious if somebody is kind of in that place where I was at a week ago or whenever that was, or in these moments of fear around stepping into their knowing, what would you say to them?
Yeah, that you said it, that there is an ancient memory of a wound, and this is important for us to know. This is why I say, like, until a woman knows where she comes from, she cannot truly know where she's going or what she's here for. Because when we begin to come into the body holds memory, right? And now, there's so many things that prove that say that, studies, right? Like that wonderful book, The Body Keeps Score. It holds memory. But we think that it only holds our memory of this life. But memory in the body is also lineage long. And, one of the things is when we are woven from even before we were in our mother's womb. The egg that we come from was actually in our great grandmother's womb. And so there's all this epigenetic material that is passed down and that we are still carrying in our bodies, in our tissue. And so when we come back into the body to say, I want to be my highest self, I want to, feel fulfilled, we really don't know what we're asking for, right? Because there's a reason why we're not remembering.
You've forgotten some things on purpose. This is not amnesia. You chose to forget because it's a lot.
Yes. So, and I think that's such a perfect setup. It's the intelligence of life. That it's kind of like when you give birth and then, 6 months later you forgot how painful that was. Like, maybe I do want to do it again, But there is this memory that begins to awaken. And, there was times in our feminine body, our collective feminine body, where, women were burned at the stake for being attuned to their medicine, whether it was working with herbs, whether it was, just dreams that they would have, gnosis. So their oracleness and their medicine woman self was burned at the stake, was taken into an asylum. And there's so much pain in our collective feminine body that when we begin to tap into those gifts, that needs to be reinstated. And so we're going to have these fears that feel at times so much bigger than us. This isn't a little fear that you have. It's almost like a haunting in a way sometimes, where it's like, do I want to do it? Do I not? But something in you knows that it has to go there because it already chose that. And so many of us now, because we have made that choice to be born into this incarnation and become a part of this movement, of this restoration, or what I call this revival, this is part of the work to remember. And I like to think of it that this is the price we pay. This is the education that we engage in order to receive and become available for the gifts that are there. Because yes, there is so much feminine, collective feminine body pain, but there's also so much wisdom, so much medicine, so much power, that flows through there. And so it's almost like our vessel also has to be upgraded. It has to be, cultivated with bandwidth to be able to hold the voltage of power, of true power, of power that, is also, it's benevolent in its essence, but it also has the ability to destroy. And the discernment, that I can hold a full spectrum power, but I would not exercise it or make choices that are out of alignment with my source and what I stand for in this life. And that is powerful because then you are in union in yourself. You are your feminine and you are your masculine. They've come into this sacred marriage inside of yourself and even your own sacred child, because we all have our inner wounded child. And so when we reunite this holy family within, then this is when we are actually available for life. Because now I can trust my inner masculine to stand up for myself and not receive others' opinions and judgments that are not supportive of me. And I also have access to my beautiful feminine that is healing, that is grace, and she doesn't have to hide. She doesn't have to
Yeah.
pretend she forgot. She doesn't have to just smile and be pretty. It's they've come into this allyship within that now allows me to stand up with assertiveness, and I think that for women, this is kind of one of the things that we've learned is that we're either passive or we're aggressive.
Yeah.
It's like if I'm in the boardroom and I've got to be this way, and it's like that aggressiveness, or that passivity that I am just here in service to everyone. I'm last. I don't take care of myself. I don't know how to hold a boundary. But really, when we bring those two together, instead of being separate, they become assertiveness, because you know where to exercise your power and you know when to step back and receive. You know that sometimes that's what's needed. And again, when we have this kind of knowing inside of ourselves, you really can create anything in the world, because you're not concerned with other people's limited opinions of you, your life, of the world, because you're attuned to something greater. And you're also not going to hide your softness and your gentleness, because that's what actually brings you alive. So and to bring it back, because I don't think that I answered directly your question about the vision for woman. And I feel like it's so important, because for me, that embodied woman is the fountain of life for her community, for her family, for her society. Because it's almost like she becomes a vessel of living water. And what happens, like, towns and cities are built around these wells of living water, right? And so that's what it is. It's like almost you become this source of this endless wisdom and stream of care. And so, I who then stands in front of that? And some people are gonna be like, get away from me, kind of like a vampire. Which is great, because you don't want those people
Yeah,
around
go away.
you.
I want you away anyways.
Exactly. So there's so much beauty in that, and also in reclaiming that is instinctual self of woman that is attuned to her fierceness, who hasn't lost her claws, who hasn't lost her feralness, but who also doesn't walk around in that, who doesn't walk around guarded or defensive all the time, but rather it's like, yeah, my claws are here, and I don't need them unless I need them, and when they come out, they're ready. And I think that that's another aspect of woman, is reclaiming her knowledge and her ability to be in a world of predators, because predators are here. And when we don't want to acknowledge that, we are the victim to that, or we are, or we become perpetrators as well, because women can also be the victimizer and the manipulative and the all these things, that
Right.
all these things that we don't want to be, but that are there. And so when we restore all those aspects of ourselves into health, they all work together for this beautiful harmony, rather than, try to keep them away. And that one's not pretty, so I don't want her in my space. I often feel like there's 1,000 women in me, and they all want different things at times. And then there's those times that they're all working together, and that's, for me, such a blessing, because I think that that's where we tune into different streams of wisdom that come together for what's the highest and best for this person in front of me, or this situation in front of me, but that also includes me, that it doesn't exclude me, because most of us are great at that, but we exclude ourselves. So it really is about including ourselves in our own loving, in our own life.
What a beautiful vision. Oh, I don't, if they're not watching this on YouTube, it's moving me to tears because it's true. It's just truth to me. It's so beautiful. You said, you used the word revival, that I don't know if you said we're in the midst of it or it's about to happen. Can you speak to what that revival is and what you know?
Yes, I love this. I love this word so much because it's it's the it's the remembrance of something ancient, the that coming alive again. And I feel that this is what is happening. I call it the womb revival because, and actually, it was Richard Rudd who we were having a conversation, and he was like, "How is that womb revival going?" And I was like, "Wow, that is genius! You're right. It is and and why I love that is because that word has been used by religious institutions for the most part. But when we bring it back into our bodies, what we're experiencing is that feminine revival, that not feminist, but feminine. And it's a feminine spirit, is the feminine Christ. It is that is awakening within our bodies. And that the beautiful thing about this is it's not anything new or that we have to, it's what you're experiencing right now, even when you're hearing me. And I say this all the time, I'm not saying anything that you don't already know. I'm not. Right. Because we're all come from that same source. And we've all carried these ancient memories. You carry memories of your lineage, Jen, that I carry memories of my lineage. And when we come together, we remember together, and it's almost like a thread is connected. It's reconnected in this web, right? And so for me, this feminine revival, this feminine Christ that is being born through the woman's body at this time is so important because this is reconnecting us to our ancient power for today's world, and how does that feminine Christ show up in her home now? After it being fragmented for so many generations, we've been under agendas that have fragmented our humanity, our care, our compassion, our grace. And this is what we're reweaving. But we cannot do that if we don't stand in our own source, because then we're still seduced by external forms of power, or and of value that, or validation, not value, of validation that move us away from actually what is truly valuable, which is our own inner being. And that, I think I said this in one of the calls, but you become that fragrance. It's an essence. It's nothing that you learn or pay to get. It's like, it's you. It's your commitment, your devotion flowering. And that's an inner journey. And what people like me, women like me, that I'm sitting here talking to you about these things, I speak from my experience. I don't speak from a textbook. That is great reference, and it served me. We have vehicles that allow us to deepen, but ultimately all that is tools, because what you have is the uniqueness. There's wisdom in you that's going to come through you that will ignite remembrance in other women, in other humans. And so this is when we're in that authenticity, it kind of comes forth naturally, and so many of us are like, I've spent so much money trying, like, how do I do this? How do I do that? Where it's like, at the end of the day, all those things are beautiful and helpful. But your development with your creator, that relationship, that faith is what's going to give you the courage to go against the grain and to say, you know what, actually, maybe I won't, and this is no judgment, because I've done it all, and I want to say that, like, I'm speaking from where I am right now today. But even this aspect of, it's almost like woman's being erased. And it's like the more that we're remembering, the more fierce that becomes, of that erasure of woman, and even even through our facial expressions, it's like the more Botox, like now that you have and you can't move your face, like to me, that's an erasure of our expression, because I can't tell when you're mad, unless you open your mouth. I can't tell when you're, happy and excited and surprised, and this is now normalized as a good thing, and so for me, that's why, and obviously I'm very expressive, right? But that just feels, I remember when I went and I had Botox for, I think when I turned 38, my sister was like, I'm going to give you a gift. Let's go do this because, you have these frown lines. Like you look like you're always concerned. And I was like, okay, let's go. And after that, I just felt like I couldn't, there was a part of me that couldn't, I was disconnected from. It was almost like this heaviness that I was walking around, and maybe it was because it was too much. I don't know. But there was this heaviness and this thing of like just reminding me constantly of why am I wanting to erase the expressions that make me me, and then when my niece was born, that kind of just really took it to another level, because I see myself as her role model as she grows up, because I'm like, I'm the cool auntie, or the weird. I said, I don't want to be a role model of that for her. I want her to see like, wow, you can be beautiful in these other ways. You can, you don't have to look like a uniform cookie cutter woman, because we're all trying to fit into these cookie cutter things that we're not designed for. We're also unique and beautiful, and I really think it's our own job, not society's, not men's jobs, but our own, to reclaim that, embody it, live it, and then we're going to create different kind of standards for ourselves, different standards for our relationships and for men. And you know what? I will say, men adapt because men want to procreate. So, and most men,
so you're like, we're good. Botox or not, boobs or not, we're good.
Yeah, and it really is mostly women, like us women, that are like, think about like, sometimes when I wear something really cute and I'm thinking about my girlfriends, I'm like, and when they're gonna be like, oh, that's a pretty dress or whatever it is, men don't really do that. Men don't really care, but there is a normalization that, we have, and then they're able to get away with a lot. And so whatever they can, if you have any teenagers, you understand this, that teens are going to push their boundaries, and whatever they get away with, they're just going to keep pushing and pushing. And so if our standards keep lowering and lowering, they're not going to be the one to say, hey, you should have higher standards for yourself. This is, no, they're not, so that's our job. And, something I was talking to my friend this morning about was how we can sit here and say, well, men this, men that, but ultimately, who is raising these men? It's us. We are raising these men. And so, and granted, there's so many single moms. I'm a single mom, but there's so many single moms that when we don't understand our value, we also impose things upon our kids and our boys, and we treat them a certain way. And that develops how they view, value or not women, how they commodify women. And so there is that's what I'm saying, like everything's in the home and it begins in us. Because then when you are the overflow, you're just naturally overflowing rather than trying to fix your environment, right? So I really do feel that the more that women step into this, we are going to see a shift, because again, the more that we raise our standards, men are also going to adjust to that. And men do want powerful women. They just don't know.
I feel like they do. Yeah. I mean, the way I see you, the way I see, Alana Warlup, I just interviewed these different women that I'm like, like how could a man not want that? It's because it's true beauty. It's true power. and to me, so attractive, right? It's magnetic. It's magnetic because it's real versus just like, and I think you're right. Or as you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of men that are like, oh, this is what we have, so we'll work with what we have. But maybe the other thing that's coming to my mind too is that this kind of woman, or we'll use you as an example, and I hope me, it requires more of men. It just is going to require them to show up a lot differently.
And and I think that that's kind of where we are at, and because it does require integrity, right? Like you are going to have a partner match your integrity, match your honesty, your ability to be in it together. And if this man feels, well, it's easier if I go and there's these other 10 women that don't care about integrity, all they care about is my attention. So, and that's what we're in. But when that man begins to realize the fruitfulness that a woman in her embodied nature brings to his life, and he will remember that too, because that is a remembrance for men. You know, that there is, your partner will make you or will break you. And that's what that is. So if you're with a woman who's a very superficial, who is in that, then that's what you're going to be able to receive and do. And at one point, you'll have the Barbie, you'll have the house, the car, but what about your soul? What about like what creates depth? And I think that when men think of a powerful woman, what they have seen now, it's a feminist woman who what is the word, emasculates, who emasculates their masculine, right? Because a woman who's leading in that, there's no place for a man. So that's where I feel like a lot of men are like, oh, women in their power. No, thanks, because they're more thinking of that feminist power, kind of bulldozing energy, aggressiveness, where when you are a woman where you're embodied, you're fierce about your calling, about your mission, about your loved ones, right? But also nurturing, and you're soft and you're gentle. And that's what men desire the most, is peace, because the world is not that. So, you know, when we're in partnership, that's the nourishment, that where we get to nourish each other. And not just the women, you know, the men too, but we have different gifts. And when we can come together, we amplify each other, rather than this is what I expect of you and this is what you know, it's not a transactional relationship in that way. It's a value driven lifestyle and relationship where, you know, I want what's best for you, because that's what's best for me at the end of the day, you know. And you could both find that. And yes, there is not a lot, but also, you know, that's what some of these men, I mean, you know, for example, you know, Dan, he's a very beautiful, embodied, integral man. But, you know, some of these men are also saying the same thing. Like, where are these women? Because you have these women that are conscious, quote unquote, but, you know, there's still so much of that overt sexuality leaking, you know, or repression or expectations. So there is this aspect of men also haven't really experienced that woman.
Wow. Can we talk about that? That was something that had come to my mind a couple weeks ago. Let's see if I can put this into words. I feel like you're going to do way better than me. In my mind, there's like two women standing here, right? And maybe they're both on the spectrum of consciousness, if we want to use that phrase, and they both feel comfortable in their skin. And one is overtly sexual, and one is very comfortable with her sensuality and her sacred sensuality and her body. And in my mind, when we talk about the erasure of women or the erasure of our power, sexuality was a piece of that, and it's been a part of my journey, is to find right relationship with that isn't overtly sexual, but that is fully, that there's not shame there, that's so can you speak into that a bit?
Yeah, so, you know, for me, I am a very sexual woman, and it's in the integrity of that expression. So, and what that means for me is that my sexuality isn't for attention or validation driven. And granted, I'm not perfect, so perhaps, in some unconscious ways it still shows up. Yet when I am in my sexual expression, for me, what's most important is the intentionality of it. When I can create a container for my sexuality that is held within sacredness and holiness, then I am free to be self-expressed, to be fully expressed. There's no shame, there's no guilt, because we are the body of the goddess, right? We are the body of God, of the creator. So there is nothing to be ashamed of. There is nothing, but I also have the understanding that there's all these programs that feed off of my forgetting of the sacredness of my sexuality, that has abused it, utilized it. I talked about my implants. That was a false matrix of power that I was willingly signing up for so that I could feel more powerful in my sexuality. And so surrendering that, it's almost like you surrender a part of that. But what is blossoming now is, the authentic nourishment, the authentic power that is my birthright and my matrix. When I am with my partner, for me, this is really important that when I am with my partner and we have this, commitment or integrity within it, for me, there's really nothing that I say, this doesn't go here, because it's a healing space. So, so there's an aspect of being able to explore the shadows and the gifts and the grace and the beauty and all of that. That's all part of the sexuality. Yet, if I kind of say, well, this doesn't go because this isn't holy, this isn't sacred, there is an aspect of that. Well, I'm not contained then, like within that vessel of alchemy that sexuality truly is. And so for me, when the way I see my partner is a human that I get to worship the divine through him.
Yes.
And same with me, and so when we come together as that, all of our little inadequacies that are human, they're seen in a different way that is healing. It actually heals it, because then I can allow myself to be seen in the imperfection of my human, because I stand for something greater. And that's the energy that's in the vessel. That's alchemizing. And so when you're lucky, blessed enough to be able to be like that with someone, what it opens in them, it inevitably is the same, because as a woman, our sexuality is also meant to initiate men into their godliness, into their kingdom.
Yeah. I want to pause you on that, and I want you to go deeper on that if you can. Do I have it? I don't know if this is totally related, but so I've got the Magdalene. I always mix up the Magdalene Mysteries, this book.
Oh, yay!
I know, it's all marked up. It's amazing. Let's see if I can find the one spot.
Big shout out to my amazing teachers, Saren and Azra.
Oh, yeah, you know them. We haven't talked about this serendipitous, it's wild. This book has been and a huge unlock for me, to say the least. This is the part of the book in the very beginning where she's talking about the Christ and Mary Magdalene and how she is the anointrix and he is, Magdalene is a title meaning the initiator, and Christ is a title for the anointed one. And so I wanted to ask you about that, and that's been just kind of floating around in me lately too, this idea of what a woman initiates in a man in that sexual union, what's happening there, and vice versa.
Oh my goodness. So good. So good. I feel that the most important aspect of this is that though it's that return to our power, because this is part of our power, this remembrance. And woman is the bridge between spirit and matter, right? We hold this wisdom that the woman's body is informed by spirit, by this opening, initiating energy. And when we are able to cultivate that, when we're able to honor that and to value that, then when you are with a partner of, I mean, gosh, that means so many things nowadays, but
Yeah.
when you are with your partner, you actually, what you initiate like the anointing that happens is that they are brought back into divine alignment. They are brought back into remembrance of their mission, of their kingdom. It's almost like you initiate, and this was actually things that women did do in history. That
Right.
where warriors would come to temples of women to be healed sexually, to be, in that, because it was held within a different context than what it would be today. That was corrupted into brothels. That was, when the patriarchy stepped in. It really corrupted a lot of women's sexual powers. But the when we restore that within ourselves, that blueprint, this is the most intimate we can ever be with anyone else, right? Like, this is true intimacy. And so when someone lays down their guard, their weapons, their shields, their armor, and they come together in that space, what opens is this healing energetic vortex. And
Yeah.
that's where, the woman is holding this space, because we are naturally carriers. We hold
Yeah.
babies and gestate them. We carry so many things. So it's like creating that sacred healing space where a man can finally relax deeply on a cellular level, and is also something rises within him. And so when it's a two-way reciprocal space and
Yeah.
intention, then that's where miracles can happen, because that's where, you co-create from that space. Like, that, it's not just about, the conception of a baby is an example of the capacity that a man and a woman have to create life on this planet. But it isn't just human babies. This is like, the woman can carry the vision, gestate it, but the man also has such an important piece here. And this is why, when I hear women talk about, we don't need men, we don't, I'm like, what? No, absolutely. I love men. I need men. Like, yes, I cannot live without a man. Like, I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of crazy, to
That's
me.
not an option. Yeah.
No, like, I am not signing up for that mission. I am not going to that planet, because again, like, when you realize what is possible between the both of you, or in that space, the healing, the remembrance, I have had experiences where, and I don't know if you or any of your listeners have, but, have you ever had this, like, an orgasm where it just, this energy moves through, and you just cry, you weep.
Yes.
Yes, that's remembrance. That's opening our feminine body. That's
Yeah.
allowing that space. But, when at the beginning, when I used to experience that, I thought something was wrong with me, and I would go to the bathroom, and I was like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with me?" Like, this, I'm so emotional, and
Yeah.
now I realize, wow, when that,
Oh,
I allow it, because what it does, it's almost like it opens this black hole of access,
yeah.
of remembrance. And that's purity, and that
Yeah.
expresses sexually. So, how we look at our sexuality matters. Pleasure is a byproduct. Pleasure
Yeah.
is a small thread of the real sexual potential that exists there. And of course, in order for us to access that sexuality, we also have to have an embodied sensuality.
Yeah.
And sensuality is being connected to our senses and being connected into the world as like this interconnected web, right? Like I feel the breeze, I experience the sunlight as this pleasure, as this like I can attune to that sensuality. And I bring those things into my sexual experiences or even with myself. And that's reconnecting to our womb wisdom. And our womb, when it opens that access to that, what some people call Akashic library or, all these things, because that's where we reconnect to our cosmic intelligence, to that great womb, which are, is the origin of everything. And so, yes, we can create books from there, create businesses, anoint our partners in their mission, in their visions, so tell me, I mean, that may not be something you're going to find on a dating profile.
I'm like, I've tried
But
a
would it
dating
stand
profile
out?
so many times. Like, listen,
But
you
wouldn't
gotta tap
but
into
wouldn't
my
it
womb.
but wouldn't it stand out,
If you want
It's
to
like
stand out, that's how you do it.
you gotta stand out, you gotta put it out there, and it really is beautiful when you finally meet partners that can see you in that
Yeah.
way, because that is something that we all long for, and maybe it's not as available, but when it comes, wow, like it's
Yeah.
like they see you. It's not just your physicality, it's not just
Yeah.
what you can offer in that way. It's like, do you know what I am a doorway to? And so how do you think I'm going to show up to my dates? I'm not there like, oh, let me prove to him that I'm the best option. Let me
Right.
prove to him of like what an amazing partner I am. I am like, no, let me see who you are. Like, are you someone that I want to invest my life-giving energy to? Like, do I want to help you bring about your vision? Is this fruitful for both of us? That's where I'm thinking when I go, and yeah, most of the time it doesn't work out well. I'm okay with that because I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? Great. I'm saving on a therapist. I'm saving on the trauma. I'm saving on my mental health because that's what and you begin to, when you value yourself that way, Jen, you're also concentrating energy versus
Yeah.
leaking it everywhere,
Yeah.
and so when that partner comes or not, like for me, I feel like I've come to a place where I accept that if that is not meant to be lived out for me in this lifetime, I am okay with that. It doesn't mean I'm going to give up on it, because I understand that perhaps that's more accessible to my niece, where it's like, okay, I planted my flag on this planet of this remembrance and this ability, and that's, I know it in my being to be true even when the world doesn't reflect that. And
Yeah.
so, and that's what happens when we're going against the grain, right? Pioneers are going to not, they're not going to be agreeable, and they may
Yeah.
not get the reward at the beginning, but
Yeah.
someone's got to do it, someone's got to go. And so for me, that's what's so important. And now I am meeting men in that are rising to that occasion, and that are I feel that when we if we start to sort of be in this superficial thing, there's always going to be someone prettier. There's always going to be someone richer. There's always going to be someone who's better in some way. Always. It doesn't matter how amazing you are. And and so if that's where the value is being perceived or driven from, then what is actually your uniqueness other than this
Right.
chase on the superficial realm, that you're never going to really have that man's heart anyway. He's not going to trust you to submit in the ways that serve a greater vision, and you as well, because there's all this talk now about submitting, and all these things, where I feel like when you submit to your creator and to your vision, everything else is a byproduct of that. You show up in that, and you also honor yourself. You have self-respect. You're not going to be in this superficial chase or competition, where it's like, no, this is this vessel, the way that I have, like for you, how challenging it is to do your work.
Yeah.
You know how many tears you've cried over so many things, right? So it's like to just treat it as if it's an everyday thing for anyone. No, that doesn't,
Yeah.
and
It's an interesting paradox, and we talked about this a little bit in our time together this last week, that I think there can be a perception when you're following source, when you're following your knowing, when you're following what feels right, because that sense of it, it's too shallow to say it feels good, but it does feel good because it feels right. And also it's challenging, and it's deep work. It's deep work that I don't mean to say that as a like, look at me. It just is a fact that I don't think everybody is choosing that for whatever reason. You actually said that. I wrote it down at one point early. There are reasons we don't want to be in our body. There are reasons we don't want to do that work. And I understand. I avoided the deep work for a long period of time and numbed out, and then until I didn't. Yeah.
yeah. And there's, that's the challenging part. When I love that you said, like, it doesn't feel good, even though it feels good, because it is a paradox, right? Like, what feels good about it is that you're answering a call. Yeah. The sensation itself doesn't feel good most of the time, because again, when we're going into the body, we're meeting the places of rage, the places of grief, the places of our mothers, of our grandmothers, where they abandoned themselves, where they were betrayed. We are meeting those places. But at the same time, that's what's allowing us to become more human. And that's what's allowing us the grace and compassion to be able to be with another in their betrayal, in their grief, in their suffering, and not judge them, And so I do, like, again, it's such an intelligent design, and we get too caught up in the smallness of our dark experiences because we're not connected to the bigness of who we truly are. And that's why I say, like, that's what's so important, and in our call, it was like, there's a mythology that's being lived out through you. So if you identify with just feeling shitty every day for the next week, you're going to just keep reaffirming that experience.
Right.
But when you understand that, see, this is the beauty of woman, is that woman, when she knows why she's doing something, she can bear so much,
Oh, yeah.
We're very resilient. But when we don't know why, that's where the confusion, the self-doubt, all of that. And even when we know why, yeah, it still sucks. So let's sit here and let's cry. Let's cry for an hour together. And let's just like move it out. And we're going to feel so much lighter after that, And because we don't give ourselves permission to experience those less than agreeable emotions and sensations, then we don't really get to see what's on the other side of that. And I think that, that's why it's so important to me, anyway, that we remember who we have been, where we come from, so that we understand that we are not just here for this next 5-year plan, 10-year plan, this lifetime. We are here on a movement that is being lived out through you, whatever that is for you. We each have our goal to place, and so it is challenging, but I think that when we recognize what we truly are, then it gives us the courage to move through those challenges, to move through those things. And, Jen, you know this because you're a mom as well, right? So how old is your baby? Your baby.
I've got 3. I have 18, 16, and 13.
Wow.
Daughters.
Look at that.
All
Okay, so
daughters.
all daughters. Wow. All these womb wives.
Oh, we got a lot of wombs in my house. Yeah.
So, you're really going to understand this, that you would do anything for your children, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And a mother's strength, like it doesn't matter if you like it or not. You're going to get it done when it's for your babies. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 1,000%.
And so you may think like, oh, I couldn't do that, or I I don't have the strength to do that. But when you're in that situation, when you're in that place, and it comes about your babies, there is a supernatural strength, ability, and access that comes through you in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And every mother knows this, that
Mm-hmm.
that kind of floods through. That's the same power I feel is it. That's what's accessible to us in an everyday experience with the challenges that arise when we are rooted in our calling, in our mission, when we understand that I'm not just here for myself.
Right.
This is what I signed up for. And so
Yeah.
there is like, you may not like it. It may not feel good. And but you're still going to show up for it because you have no other choice. That's where your soul fulfillment is, not necessarily you human, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I love motherhood, because I feel like it really gives you those reference points to how, like, the power in our bodies, the power to birth, create, to show up, the resiliency, all of those things. So it is important. I feel, because it is such a discouraging path at times, and somehow we believe, or it's not somehow, it's actually designed that way. Like we see it on Instagram, and we see it on social media all the time, of like, oh, abundance this, abundance that, and heal yourself, heal your trauma so you can, be this and be. And the truth is that if you're really following the path of a soulful, like a soul led, you're going to carve your own way. You can look at others for reference, but ultimately you're going to have to grow your own body, grow your own self. And, and if you're lucky, you're going to have amazing mentors along the way that can model this or that can guide. But ultimately, that's already in you. You're just sort of like peeling off all the forgetting, all the, all the ways in which we move to our mind and we want to create from there. It's like, no, come back. Let me, how's my belly? Is my belly soft? Is it, our bellies are sensing. They sense. You've ever been around, when you're in groups of women and you're around each other often enough, our wombs sink in. We start to bleed at the same time. What do you think that is?
Isn't that wild?
That's a sensing intelligence.
Yeah.
That's why it's like, when you're listening to someone, listen to them from your belly, not from your head, and see what a different experience that is, where you start to feel it's more like you're sensing who they are. You're sensing the energy behind their words. You're not just listening to the words and your interpretation. And so and again, all those skills, those are skills that in business, in partnership, in mothering, all these things are what allows us to become efficient, not productive. Woman is designed to be efficient, not productive.
That's a major distinction there. I mean, there is so much programming around productivity, and so many women that I talk to, and I was definitely this way, it has felt almost impossible to break out of that because of the societal structures too, and the pressure that is real to produce certain things, and to be undoing that and moving into efficiency and what you talked about earlier, like moving with cycles and understanding that whether it's in our body or it's in nature or it's throughout the day, like being in tune enough to do that, it's all a thing. Yeah.
It is. And how amazing. I'm really excited to know you and to get to witness you in your unfolding, and in these times that you are reinventing the way that you show up in the world through your remembrance. And when you have skills that you have gained in this life, like for example, you know how to be productive, you know how to create that, sort of life. But now what you're cultivating in yourself is essence. And when you can really become available to that essence, then when it's your time to express it. I mean, you're expressing it now with this podcast, but when you express that in the world, you have the knowledge already. So
Sure.
no matter what it is that you create, you're going to make a success out of it, because now you're going to have even more life force, because it's your essence. It's not just a business plan. It's a business
Yeah.
plan as a conduit of your essence into the world. And that's so exciting to me, because I feel like that's what we need, is medicine women in the world, but that are really honoring that essence of yeah, I am sourced here in my belly from my creator, not and I express it in business, but I am not business,
Yeah.
at the mercy of it or enslaved to it.
Right.
You honor yourself in a different way. So it's beautiful. And I do want to say about the cycles that it is important, because like for me, it's been really challenging to honor the cycles and collaborate with others, because it's almost like, they have a plan, and whenever I come in, I'm like, ooh, good luck, because with me it's like, you get me for a few months and then you don't hear from me for a few months, because I'm in my winter, and when I'm in my winter, I'm in my own process, I'm in my own inner beingness, and then when the spring comes, that's when I kind of come back out. And then summer, it's go time, I'm in that. But then, even now we're in August, and I'm already starting to feel the call of like, slow it down, slow it all down. Come September, October, I start to go into my cave, and that's my time to be with the creator, to be prepared for the next year, and so that's been so nourishing for me. And I feel like that's why I get to show up the way that I do, and that I'm able to, because I don't forget how that's what holds everything else. So to
Yeah.
me, being here with you, having this incredible conversation is amazing. But if I couldn't be in this, if I didn't honor even more so those times where I've got to go away, where I've got to do my inner work, where I've got to go into my inquiries and refine, because we're constantly refining, right?
Yeah.
And the world, yeah, it has a challenge with that, because they're like, wait, what do you mean you can't schedule anything after October? I'm like, nope, October to February, I am not available, because I don't know where I'll be. I don't know if I'll be here or in another country or in a
Yeah.
mountain somewhere. I have no idea. But that's my works for me. That may not work for everyone, but I'm designing my life in that way and my business in that way, because I don't want to preach what I don't live.
Right.
For me, that's very important. It's like, I teach from how I live. I teach from my experience, and that's more powerful than, me memorizing things and just kind of saying them. It's different. And my relationship with the creator always is first. So that's how I, at the very least, do my best to not be in crisis, to not be
Yeah.
crisis. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, let me start listening. I don't want to get smacked around. It's like, I'm not in the
I,
victim. I've already experienced it.
I don't need any more smacking around. I'm good.
Yeah, but we say that, but then we don't listen. We're just like, well, are you sure though? Like, send me another sign. Send me 10 more signs, and then I'll pay attention. And I think that's the thing, and that's something I also am really passionate about. Is like, when we remember that, and when we value our gnosis, our inner wisdom, then we don't wait for crisis to give us a direction. We willingly, consciously prepare. And so that's for me, even now, like what I'm most refining and investing into is like, how quickly can I adapt to my guidance, to the guidance I'm receiving, rather than, oh, but that doesn't make sense. And that,
Right.
and the more I listen to that and I'm willing to make the mistake, the more actually that it pays off and that it leads me, versus waiting for, I know I got to do this, but I'm just going to keep it going until the wheels fall off. And then I wonder why I'm in this roller coaster, instead of an ebb and flow of life.
So much wisdom. We've been taught. I want to be sensitive to your time. We could talk all day, Annabelle. This is
We
so
really
amazing.
can.
I know.
We go into
Would you?
timelessness.
I know. We're. There is no such thing as time, right? We're just.
Yes.
If you could speak a little bit of whatever you would like to share about your work, and I can share. Maybe I'll share a little bit about your work from my perspective, the bit that I've had a piece of, and then if you want to talk about that and just let people know how they can get in contact with you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm taking this Gene Keys class right now. We're just wrapping up on the Venus sequence, and so people will have information on all of this in the show notes that people can look up your work and how to get in contact with you. But just as a bit of a plug that you didn't ask me to give, it's been so powerful. It's been just... I don't even want to just say knowledge, because it's like you said, there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. It's been wisdom that I've been able to take in. And also, I don't know how to put words around this, but the actual energy that you and Dan offer and that you've cultivated in that space is, I believe, and this is my felt experience, recalibrating. Like it's like the time that I spent in that 2-on-1 session with the two of you, it was the next day I was telling a friend of mine about it. And these words were just kind of spilling out of my mouth that I was like, they're just in another stratosphere. They're just like, they are in a different place. And the way that they show up is beyond words. And what happens in that space, at least what I feel like has happened for me, is that it's literally recalibrated my energy to if there was like a dial that it could turn some direction where I'm like, whoa. And that's beyond words. That's beyond knowledge. That's even, I would say, beyond wisdom, or maybe it's embodied wisdom or something. But, so thank you, first of all, and thank you for being a woman who has just done this work. And thank you for offering just the way that you see other women, the lens that you see women through, with just seeing beauty, is just such a gift. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I receive that. And that means so much to me, because it is that's beauty. It's like when we can recognize that beautiful essence in another, there's an aspect that also calls it forth. It's like, I see you. There you are. Let's do it. Why are we wasting time? Thank you for that. And yes, I have loved collaborating with Dan in the Venus sequence of this Gene Key wisdom that's so potent and beautiful. And yeah, those classes are really special to us. And we had been wanting to do this for a really long time, and finally it kind of came into being, which has been nice. And we respect each other so much. I'm sure you can tell from just even the way we speak.
It's beautiful.
And so it's really beautiful to see it actually, wow, it does work. The Venus sequence, here we are after ending our relationship and rebirthing it in a new way, which has been really, really beautiful. And then besides that, that's one of the little things,
I
but
know you have so
like
much. Yeah.
for me, where my passion and my fire, my holy fire really ignite is in the grief work, and in the communal grief work, griefs that I teach, because I feel that's at the very core of uh, my feminine well, and so when I work with grief and rage and all the ugly things that we don't want to work with, that's where I find the magic. And the Jinkies is a beautiful vehicle for context, but I feel that ultimately, as a woman, it's returning to that feminine nature and awakening that, enlivening
Yeah.
that. So for me, that womb wisdom, the grief work, the all of that, like feminine leadership, this feminine Christ that's emerging, this is where my devotion really ignites in a different way, because that's what we're here for,
Yeah.
and everything else really is a tool to remember that. And
Yeah.
each other, we're mirrors. If I don't reflect your beauty, it's like if I'm denying my own, so in a
Yeah.
way it is a selfish thing, in a way, because I'm like, if I don't see your beauty and I don't see how amazing, incredible you are, it means I cannot see myself, you know and we've already done that, and it doesn't work.
You're right.
It's like, let's call for beauty rather than our cattiness and our all these
Yeah.
other things we're good at,
Yeah.
but it's like, imagine that, like, woman to woman restoration of relating is so important and vital, because we have been under programs of competition and of manipulation for so long towards each other, and on us. But when we dissolve those threads and we really start to see how powerful we are in sharing our stories, sharing our pain, we realize, like, that's all a lie. It's all false, and we return to our seat of power, our wombs. And that's just another level. It's kind of like what you said, another stratosphere, the word that you said,
Yeah.
of meeting someone else's beauty in that. And women are freaking amazing at that. Like, whenever you do good, you just turn around and want to share it. You want
Yeah.
to do that. And so this is where community returns, where healthy community returns by the health of our own feminine bodies and wisdom. Mhm.
Amen to that.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Beautiful. Um, I will have all of the information for listeners in the show notes so they can reach out to you and discover your work. And thank you again. Thank you again for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for your generosity and for inviting me on here for this. This gives me life, I'm just like, now
Good.
I'm gonna go record for our other for our session from yesterday that I couldn't
No.
connect.
Okay.
So I'm really grateful. Thank you. And thank you to all the listeners who tuned in. May you be blessed and a part of you ignited and amplified through this conversation that we just had. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for being here and for existing. And gosh, may we just keep anchoring this frequency and this love and this care and this truthfulness.
Yeah.
Truth is beautiful. Thank you so much, love.
Thank you.